friend Rusty said I didn't have to drink today to escape reality, and I'm real grateful about that because doing something like this in the past, I would have had to take some drinks before doing something like this. It's always been a big fear of mine, speaking in front of people and things like that. I could look back to when I was a young man and in school. If you had a project, you had to present it. I'm talking third, fourth grade, whatever. I would just not do it, so I wouldn't have to get up there and do that. But so I grew up right around the corner here in Kingwood, and when I growing up, I don't have very many memories of my family being together. I'm one of four, and my parents separated when I was in kindergarten. And I grew up in a dysfunctional home. In the past, I used to have this idea that I was the way that I was because of the way that I was raised, and today I know that not to be true. And through this program, I'm able to forgive my family and see that I actually was raised in a loving home, and my parents did the best that they could. But so growing up, a lot of dysfunction, and when my parents split, I would most of the time I'd be with my dad and me and my brother. My sisters were older than me, and when my parents split, my mom got an apartment with my sisters, and so my dad would take me to school, and then my mom would pick us up after that, and we would be with her until my dad got off work. And I had my brother-in-law who I spent a lot of my time with, and he's one of us, and kind of a bad influence on me. But I could remember I was probably in second grade. I think my first true addiction was mischief. He would take me around, and during Christmas time we'd go out, and he'd take me. We'd go steal people's Christmas lights and deck out his apartment. And I saw a lot of crazy behavior, and there was also a lot of using going on. Everyone smoked pot and did drugs and drank, so I was kind of exposed to all of that. The first time I used, I was actually 11 years old, and I was with one of my older sisters, and I smoked pot or whatever, and I don't remember much. I just remember that I had a freaking blast, and I was like, man, I cannot wait to do this again, and so I wasn't an everyday user. Every now and then I'd get to do that with my brother-in-law, whatever, my sister, and I continued to get in a lot of trouble. I was the bad kid at school, and one thing that I was kind of reflecting on when I was younger, I can remember seeing kids at school and thinking, man, I wish I was like that guy. I wish I had his life. And I always kind of dealt with this measure and compare thing from a young age. I couldn't always see that, but now I can. And that followed me, and it got worse and worse. But I can also remember being very insecure. I had fears of embarrassment, fears of looking stupid, and those were big time. And sometimes that's a fear that I had coming up here doing this. Oh man, I'm gonna look stupid, whatever. But I don't have to drink over that today. Anyways, moving along, I started getting into some pretty serious trouble by the time I was around seventh grade. My using became a little bit more regular, and started moving up to other things. And when I was in eighth grade, I remember in seventh grade, I was real involved in sports. I've always loved sports, and that was a big part of my life. And when I was in seventh grade, I remember before basketball tryouts, I smoked pot, and I'd taken some pills the night before that my dad had. They were trazodone, I thought it was Sanex. And I took that and I went to the tryouts the next day. And man, let's just say I didn't make the team. Um, I was pretty upset about that. I remember everybody was, they wait and they post it up on the wall and everyone's high-fiving each other. And I felt this big. And but I remember telling myself, you know what? Next year I'm going to make that damn basketball team. And I quit. My dad made a deal with me. I had already been busted for smoking pot when I was 6th or 7th grade. My dad gave me a good ass whipping. I dealt with some physical abuse from my dad, and I just, most, I guess, regular folk, that would happen. You think, shit, I ain't doing that again, but not me. I just got to plan better. Can't get caught, whatever. And main thing was that I admitted to it. So I told myself, well, if I just deny it, how am I ever going to get caught? Just deny it. And so going into 8th grade, I always kind of made good grades for the most part. I was diagnosed ADD, so I started taking Adderall at a young age as well, something I left out, probably 4th grade. And anyways, but my dad made a deal with me that if I would pass a drug test, that I could, he would buy me a nice basketball goal. So I remember I put that shit down. I was focused on school. I was actually looking back at some of my grades back then, and I'd got commended performance on my tax test, the state testing for all the testing, and a perfect score on the social studies part of it. And man, I'd be out there every day training for basketball, and sure enough, I made the team and did well in football, basketball, ran track, all that. And so, I didn't really think that smoking pot was a problem. I saw it all around me my whole life, drinking. I drank within those times too, and I just thought that's what people did because I saw it around me. But going into the summer of that 8th grade, I started hanging around with a buddy of mine. He was adopted from Russia, and he was a bad kid. He was a bad kid. But we started breaking into buildings around Kingwood, going around stealing cars, checking people's door handles and things like that. And we ended up getting in a world of trouble by the end of it. And he ratted on us, whatever. And so I got probation. Can't remember the exact length, but then I was, having to take drug tests and all that. And so early on, I remember thinking, well, if I could just, do it for this long and then I quit, then I'll be good for my drug test, But that was never the case. I wish I could have seen that then, but how many times I told myself, I'm going to stop. I'm going to put it down, but there I would be the day before my drug test using, and that was very stressful, as I remember. But so I ended up somehow skating through all that stuff. I don't know if it was just because they seen some little Kingwood white kid and they just kind of gave me a pass, but I would always have to go to these drug tests, and then it wouldn't happen. But I ended up getting into more trouble when I was in 9th grade. I got arrested with pot and ecstasy while being on probation in a school zone. And, I remember telling the consequences were a little bit more severe. And I remember telling myself, man, I got to stop doing this stuff. And I was still playing sports and things like that. I always kind of, even though I would struggle, the coaches would always give me a chance because, they saw potential in me. But so I got in trouble again, and but I just kept, it kept getting worse. I started doing other things, cocaine and drinking, partying. You get in around that age group, that party lifestyle starts coming around. And when I was 16, I was still on probation, and I got arrested again for theft. And this time, the consequences a little bit more severe. That if I were to mess this up, I was going to go to TYC, which was like prison for juveniles. And I mean, by that time, basketball, football, I had already been kicked off the basketball team, quit playing football, and I remember, man, I would have to get high before school, during school. I'd be leaving, going out the back door. We'd be drinking at school, things like that, and I really didn't think nothing of it. I just thought this is what kids do at this age, and I'll stop eventually, but that never was the case. So the first time I was introduced to recovery, going through all this stuff, my dad made me go to a meeting through this program called Cornerstone, and I remember going to that meeting and just thinking, I heard what all the kids were sharing. Some of them was talking about being homeless. Some of them was talking about, using needles and things like that. And I just thought, man, these people are crazy. I ain't nothing like them, and I'll never be like them. And so my dad, at that time, he took me, I told him, well, he said, hey, you got to go do this stuff or you can't stay here. Well, I said, well, I ain't doing it. And he took me to my mom's, and my mom, being the codependent that she is, said, come on, you can stay with me. And so that really didn't help the situation. My mom's an addict, and so I used with her, used with my family. I was happy. I didn't have to go to church anymore, do all that crap my dad was wanting me to do. He was pretty tough on me. So at that time, I was basically had free reign to do whatever I wanted. I didn't have no discipline, no consequences, and so that's what I did. I just partied harder and harder, drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs. But it got to a point with the probation where I was going to court, and I remember they gave me I had to keep going to court, but I kept getting it rescheduled because I couldn't pass a drug test. My lawyer would put it back. And it was like, hey, you got to pass this or I can't help you, like you're screwed. And, so with all my determination, I thought, all right, I'm going to pass this damn drug test. And I remember being with my friends the night before, smoking pot, drinking, shaking hands, man, see you guys later, because I couldn't stop. But, I just thought a lot of my problems were because I was on probation. If I could just get off this damn probation, I could do what the hell I want. Everybody get off my back, and then I'll be all right. And so, sure enough, I remember I prayed right before that court, said, God, I had a lot of them 911 prayers. I really didn't believe in God. My dad always made me go to church, and I saw, we had a rough relationship, so I really related that to, well, if he's a Christian, shit, I don't want none of that. And so anyways, I prayed, and I said, God, please help me pass this drug test. I promise I'll never do it again. And sure enough, I went in there and I freaking passed the drug test. I can't explain that. Call it luck, call it what you want, but I passed. And they gave me like a 30-day reprieve to kind of get my life together. I had to do everything my dad told me. And part of his conditions were I had to go to a church camp in high school. And so, I went down there, bad attitude, really didn't want to be there. But I remember one of the counselors kind of pulled me aside one day and said, if you was to die today and you was sitting in front of God and he said, why should I let you in? What would you say? I'm like, shit, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say. And so he, kind of started talking to me and, well, this is, what you would say, this is what you can do to get into heaven. And I was like, well, shit, yeah, let's do it. I don't want to go to hell. It sounds good to me, but, I remember leaving there and thinking, yeah, I'm done, I'm good now. I got God on my side. You know, He's going to take care of all this. And you know, I didn't I didn't understand what all that meant, surrendering my life. You know, I still wanted to do what I wanted to do. I just thought something was going to happen and I was going to change. But, you know, I think that maybe lasted for a week, and then I was right back at it. After that point, I started getting involved in, you know, I had this, that's another thing, you know, growing up, I kind of always developed this idea of being a tough guy. You know, that was my whole identity, was being this tough, hardened criminal. I just thought that was, you know, the coolest thing. That's who I want to be. And that that's really, that plagued me for a long time. But I so I got involved and started selling drugs. You know, my family members, certain other people started selling. They sold drugs, and that was in that lifestyle. And I started getting involved with that. By that time, I had dropped out of high school. But I ended up going back because I wanted to get into the Marine Corps. I thought that'll fix me. You know, I'll go there, I'll get disciplined and get my life straight. But you know, I didn't stop selling drugs, and unfortunately, maybe fortunately, I got arrested with some pretty serious stuff. And so there I was, you know, back in trouble again. And I was on I had messed up a bunch. They gave me 4 years probation. I messed up, you know, failed drug. When you get an adult, they drug test you. And so I failed multiple drug tests. I was put on the CTI, Change Through Intervention program, for Harris County, which is the strictest form of probation. It's like random drug tests every week, multiple visits with your probation officer, yada yada, see the judge. And I'm like, man, I ain't gonna be able to do this. So my dad had actually started working the steps with Al-Anon, and thank God for that, man. But I saw a big change in my dad. You know, he had made amends to me, and he just really was a changed person. And me and my dad didn't have a relationship. I'd stopped talking to him after he wanted me to go to recovery and all that. I had big resentments against recovery, but I thought, hell, if there's only one way I'm going to be able to do this. So I got involved in that youth program that I was talking about when I was younger, and that was really my first exposure to AA and recovery. And you know, I liked it. I loved the fellowship. They did a lot of cool things, and you know, but I always had this idea that one day, you know, after I get off being in trouble, I'll be able to manage better, and I'll figure it out. You know, just drink a little bit, party, smoke, whatever. And you know, so I stayed in that for about, I don't know, 6 months, one relapse, and got back pretty heavily involved in it. But you know, I still had those reservations. And another thing that I always struggled with, that has been a big part of my program today, is sticking with winners. You know, I still tried to hold on to some of those old friends and those old lifestyles, you know, people that were still using. I had a hard time letting go of that, and being honest. I didn't know how to tell the truth. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, but so I ended up getting to a point in the program where I was kind of like doing well, so they pair you with someone that's new in the program, and you stay with them at their house and kind of get them going and show them the ropes. And man, I ended up going to I was 21, so I ended up going to the liquor store, taking the new guys with me, getting them all drunk, and dude, I was a mess, man. But I ended up leaving, just kind of, you know, everything was going good, you know, but I didn't, you know, the consequences, that wasn't in my mind when that beast called, you know, said jump, how high. And so I went on the run for a little bit, and I turned myself in. You know, I was like, fuck, I gotta I can't just be having this on my back. So I went and turned myself in. My probation officer really liked me, and before we went to the judge, she was going to suggest that I get back involved in the program. It was like treatment, outpatient sort of deal. But when I went to see the judge, she looked at me, said, I'm tired of seeing you in my court. You know, you got to make a decision, rehab or prison. And I just thought, I ain't doing this damn recovery stuff. I just need to get away from it for a little while. So I chose prison and went down there to Pam Lynchner for a bit, and I didn't really learn anything. I got involved in exercise there and just kind of, it was more, I just kind of, it went all with that whole trying to be a tough guy thing. I just left out of there feeling, man, yeah, I went to prison, look at me, whatever. But I remember thinking, I'm done. I've been off this stuff for a little while now. I'm gonna get a job, do well, and I got out. And I think I did well for a month or so, but I got back involved in selling drugs. I liked that easy money, and with that, my addiction started getting worse. I over the next couple years, I got exposed to drug addiction is a part of my story, but alcohol was right there with it. I loved it all, but I sold OxyContin, and I started doing that stuff, and I can remember one thing. I remember is I would see these people, they would come and they'd be using needles and things like that, and I just thought, man, what, God, how could you do that? And I always saw the worst of a people's story. I would, oh man, I ain't done that yet. I ain't like them, and but I also remember when I went to that first meeting and people was talking about putting needles in their arms and things like that. Oh, I'll never do that. If there's one thing, if there's one person that it's an addict, somebody that's got a needle in their arm, they're homeless, blah blah blah. And I eventually got into doing all that stuff, and it took me down a very dark road. I'll just say that. I ended up actually reaching out for help about about 5 or 6 years ago, and I went to a treatment center down in Florida, and when I was there, I was serious. I really wanted to change my life, and so I got involved with AA. I got a sponsor. I started working the steps, and my life started getting pretty good. I had a decent job and was staying in a house with a buddy of mine, but the thing about all that is that I thought the goal, what I was expecting to get with recovery was a hot girlfriend, a good job, where I'm making all kinds of dough and things like that, and those things didn't come the way that I wanted them to, and I had worked the steps, but I was missing some things. The big one that I can remember now is I was definitely not working a 10th step. I still struggled with being honest with people. I had a couple of guys around me, but I always had that fear of being honest, the consequences, and I didn't want to talk about what was really going on inside because I was afraid, that I was going to disappoint these guys and things like that. So I kept a lot of stuff bottled in. I mean, in meetings, I did not share. I had worked the steps, but I had no problem going up to a new guy and introducing myself and saying, hey, here's someone I know, he could sponsor you, things like that, because I had this fear like, I just always dealt with this little voice in my head, that, oh, you ain't nobody, you ain't good enough, man, you don't know what you're talking about, I mean, things like that. And so it kept me from really experiencing the true gifts of this program. And I also still had that reservation. I was sold on the idea that I was a drug addict, no problem. But I didn't think that I was an alcoholic at all. And, it talks about in the book, you see other people taking drinks and doing things like that. And that would always bother me, seeing people, on the party scene and just out at the bar. Man, I just envied that. But something happened. I got a little resentment against my roommate. I felt like he had owed me some money, and I kept that bottled up. And shit, I don't know how much longer it was after that, maybe a week or two. And I was going home from work and got me some beer on the way. And God, that was a terrible feeling, being down there, and all of my people in my life were in recovery, but I was drinking and hiding it from everybody. And in the back of my head, I knew the right thing to do was to get honest about it, but that fear of like consequences and what's going to happen and how are they going to look at me, I'll figure it out. I don't have to tell everybody. I can just keep it moving, whatever. And it didn't work out. I ended up just packing my stuff in the middle of the night, coming back to Texas and living with a friend of mine who had a landscaping business, and he drank and partied real hard. And I just thought, if I stay away from the drugs, I'll be all right. And we would work hard and play hard. That was our mentality. We'd cut grass all day and drink while we were doing it, have a bottle when we got off, go to the bar, and do it all over again the next day. And I stayed doing that and think, everything seemed to be going good. I felt like I was managing pretty well for the most part. I wasn't in no trouble. I had a bed to sleep under. I had money in my pocket, whatever. That was, okay to me. That was a good lifestyle, I thought. And, but then, my best friends really close to me started dying. And, man, I miss those guys a lot. And that's a big reason why I'm doing this tonight. But I was pretty deeply affected by that. I mean, these guys were like brothers to me. I grew up, with a lot of dysfunction, and I lived with these guys, during those rough times, and so their parents were like my parents, and they, anyways, when they died, I went back to the needle, started doing heroin again, and that was about 4 years ago, something like that, and I tried my best to keep it hidden from people. I was real good at trying to make everything look like it was all right on the outside. As long as you guys believed I was doing good, then I could skate by. And long story short, things just kept getting worse for me. It got to the point where I started experiencing homelessness. Lots and lots. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've overdosed, been to jail, been to the nut house, you name it. But something, I guess, within, and I can't tell you how many times there was that I said, I'm done. I got to stop this. But, I kept thinking that I just had to man up. I just got to man up, figure this shit out, and I had seen other people that I'd grown up with that were partied hard, and they just kind of, whatever, got a job, had family, they just put it down. So I thought, why can't I do that? And I really struggled with that for a long time, trying to figure this thing out by myself, and it didn't work. About 2 years ago, I'd say, I started getting involved with fentanyl and drinking, all that. But as far as my living situation went, the homelessness thing, it even being in that spot, I would still look at somebody else that was worse and say, well, I ain't like as bad as that dude, and I still just thought I would be able to figure it out. And more and more people around me started dying. And and throughout that time, I tried coming to some meetings and things like that, but I didn't understand that idea of fully surrendering. I struggled with that for a long time. But anywho, so I can remember, shoot, it would have been not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before that. My dad allowed me to come stay at his house for a night, and we went to church, and I had used some heroin and OD'd right in front of my dad at his house, and I woke up in the back of the ambulance, and I could see my dad through the window, and the look on his face, man, it was it sucked. They talk about that incomprehensible demoralization. I felt that, and I was in tears, man. I'm fucking done. Whatever I got to do, I'm gonna do it. So I went to the hospital, and a lady come by and asked me if I wanted to go to treatment. So I went to the sobering center downtown, and then they got me linked up with Salvation Army. And when I was down, I stayed there for about maybe 6 hours. It's more like a work camp over there. They get you working and things like that, and that just don't work for me. That obsession was still there, and so I left. And at that time, I was staying in Third Ward with a buddy of mine, and I remember that night ended up being downtown at the transit center, and was calling my mom, telling her I'm going to jump in front of a bus if somebody doesn't come get me, and that I'll never forget that. But I couldn't understand why God hadn't helped me. There was multiple times where I got down on my knees, please God, make it stop, begged him. I guess I was just waiting for something thing to happen. I was just going to change, but it didn't work out that way. That's not how it works. So I ended up still staying using, and I overdosed, I don't know, in the year before I got sober, I think a dozen times. And, right before, maybe a month or two before I got sober, I was very suicidal. I did not see a way out of this thing, My family, they were just waiting to get the call, man. I was about 60 pounds less than I weigh now. I had scars from picking at my face all over me, and I really wanted to kill myself, but I was too afraid to do it. And that's a horrible feeling, being stuck in that hell. But I went on Facebook Live. I was real messed up, and I was talking about killing myself, And so all these people that, I was portraying that, everything was all right, seen that, and my family. I mean, you talk about some more incomprehensible demoralization. That shit sucked. But I just kept going. I did not want to go to AA. My thoughts were, I had already tried that, and it clearly doesn't work because I would still be sober if that was the case. And I just AA, that God, all that, man, I just saw that as being weak, man. How the hell would I just want to go to those damn meetings with them people for the rest of my life? God, hell no. Keep me out of that. But, so maybe it was April, not this last April, but the one before that. I had overdosed 3 times in a matter of like 2 weeks, And I was sleeping in I was able to stay in my mom's garage at that time, and my nieces and nephews, they were the ones that saved me each time. And I put my family, I can't really put into words how much pain I put my family through, but I I had just had this idea, and this is something I'd been in and out of treatment centers, okay? You know, I probably went to a dozen of them in 6 months. I was homeless in Austin. I went to a church freaking prison something in or Hitchcock, Texas. I mean, I'd tried it all. And but I went to treatment because I went to Synacor. I just wanted to I was like, man, I got to give these guys a break. You know, I'll just go there for a little bit, get my tolerance down, and, you know, get back to it. And I woke up after being asleep for a couple days, and, you know, that obsession was right there. And I went to the front. I had all my bags packed, and usually you just sign a paper and they'll let you go, but very strange, for whatever reason they wouldn't let me, and they said, well, why don't you call your dad? Huh. That's kind of weird how they would know for me to call my dad, because he's kind of like, I love my dad. But anyway, I talked to my dad. We prayed a little bit, and I decided I was going to stay. But I went back to my room, and man, I was in tears. And I got on my knees, and I had asked. I said, God, I don't know if you're real, but I need your help. I can't do this anymore. And whatever I have to do to follow you, I'm going to do it. No more excuses. Wasn't worried about where I was going to stay, what it took. I was determined. And, it talks about in the book, when you say that third step prayer, honestly and humbly made, sometimes a great effect was made at once. And I shit you not, the obsession was lifted from me right then, which is a miracle. But I remember that at Synacor, they wanted to keep you on a maintenance program if you were on opiates for like Suboxone. And when you first go in there, they give you that for, normally you take it for a week, get off the shit, and then, go about your way. But they were pushing that real hard, and I said, I don't want to do that. I woke up, I was feeling good. And the doctor told me, if you don't do this maintenance program, you have like a 2% chance of staying sober. But if you do this maintenance deal, you have like a 90% chance of staying sober for this amount of time. And a thought came to me, and it said, wasn't no voice or nothing like that, but it was, with God and AA, your chances are 100%. That thought came into my head, which is just really weird, Can't explain that, but so I ended up, through some other stuff, I ended up leaving treatment, and man, I got on the phone with my dad, and he let me come stay at his house. I'll let you stay here, but you got to find a place to go. And man, I was real stressed out about that, trying to find somewhere to go, but I prayed every day, and I showed up to the AA meetings around Kingwood, and I'd just go up there, sweep the floor at the Kingwood group, empty out the ashtrays, start talking to people and putting myself out there. And one Sunday, I went up to the church and got up to the front and was planning to get baptized, and I was telling some ladies out front and just telling them my story, just putting myself out there, and telling them I'm looking for a sober house. And they said, oh, well, there's Lee right there. He can get you to a place. And so, yeah, I don't know. I know that normally they typically probably don't, different on letting younger guys in, but, I was able to get into the Humble House, and, I had gotten a sponsor right after getting out of treatment. When I came in here, I've been on fire for recovery ever since that day I made that decision. And, people talk about that pink cloud. I guess I'm still on it, because my life just keeps getting better and better and better. But that was through hard work, through perseverance, through working the steps with my sponsor. I remember when I got here, I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, wake Dean up probably most of the time. Dean was my roommate, and I'd go in that room right there, and I'd open up my Bible, I'd open up my big book, I'd journal, I would pray, and I'd get my ass on my bike, and ride from here all the way to Kingwood to the meeting where my sponsor was. Because when I was using, I used to, at the end, I would ride my bike from Acres Homes all the way to Little York to score some dope. And so I remember telling myself, if you could do that, you can get your ass up and go get to a good meeting and hang out with your sponsor and get through them steps. But I stayed busy, man. I went through the steps. It doesn't take long if you put the effort in. And through doing that work, man, I just, the freedom from myself that I struggled with, that person that I was then, that ain't the case no more. And, people talk about a spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. I don't know when it happened, but it happened. The people around me, I think, saw it before I did. But, I can't put into words what this fellowship means to me. I love being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love being in recovery. If somebody would have told me how good my life is today, back then I would have probably socked you in the face, honestly, because that's how bad I hated life. And, my family relationships, they just keep getting better and better. My nieces and nephews, they call on me. They're dealing with a lot of dysfunction. Their mother's an addict, and we hang out, and I'm buying them school clothes this weekend. My family tells me they can't wait to see me. When are you going to come over again? Nobody wanted to see me before I got sober, man. And a relationship with my dad. I live with my dad now, and man, we're thick as thieves. And that's a beautiful thing. I feel like I'm like getting a second chance at my childhood. It's a real powerful thing. But man, sorry. I love my life today, and it's such a miracle. But I was able to get a job. I hold down that job. I'm trustworthy. I'm watching somebody's house right now in the program, big old nice house in Kingwood, and that dude, man, that's crazy, dude, because I used to break into houses. It's like, it blows my mind, dude, how powerful God is. And people depend, I am dependable today. People can depend on me. And man, that just really, if you have any questions about whether or not I'm an alcoholic, in the book it says there's a good way that you can find out. You can go over to your nearest bar, have you a few drinks, and just stop abruptly, Try it more than once. If you can't, you're probably one of us. And you can put that with a pill, a joint, whatever you want. And it also talks about in the book, once you've made that decision, there's nothing left but to pick up the spiritual tools at your feet, man. And I'm a testament to this, that once you do that, it says that we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. We've tasted much of heaven, a life that I couldn't have dreamed of, man. And it keeps on getting better. And it's all because of working the 12 steps. That's so important, is getting a sponsor, working the steps, and getting involved with guys that are doing this deal, man. It's a beautiful thing. That's all I got.